So it's my job now to wrap up, and I appreciate you guys have stayed so long. Avinash, could you bring up my slides for me? Remember those evaluations the guys still need to pick up. There are a number of great door prizes that we will be handing out. So just while they're picking it up, I got some questions for you guys. 1.4 million. Can anyone tell me what that number means? What is that? Is that the lotto for 649 last night? What is 1.4 million? I'm gonna keep drilling. So 1.4 million. Okay. So the next question: 350,000. What is that? Is that the population of Cambridge? I think we're a little smaller than that. Maybe the region's getting close, but 350,000. What's 350,000? What does that number mean? All right. I'm gonna let you guys mull that one over. All right, how about 65,209? It's a very precise number. What do you think that number means? Anyone have any ideas as to what that number could be? 65,209. I'm hearing a whole bunch of chatter down here. These guys have been drilling up, so they've been reading about this. And 90, that's a really small number. It's a lot smaller than the number of people that are down here in the booth. So 90, can anyone tell me what that number means? I hear some correct answers over here. So 1.4 million, that's the number of Canadians with heart disease on average per year. It's 1.4 million Canadians have heart disease. 350,000 is the number of Canadians that are hospitalized each year with heart disease. Bigger than the city of Cambridge, about the size of our region, hospitalized each year with heart disease. And 65,209 is the precise number that StatsCan puts down as the number of people that died from heart disease. About half the population of Cambridge, half the population of Cambridge, 65,209 Canadians died from heart disease in the last census. 90, that's the most powerful number to talk about, and that's really that 90% of heart disease is potentially preventable. I should be out of a job. I've said this to you guys the last few times. I should truly be out of a job. If I do my job properly, I should be able to talk myself out of it. And so that's really what the goal of everything that we've done for these years is to really talk about empowering all of us to lead healthier, and the challenge is on. We will be a blue zone city in 5 years. Let's see if we can do this. So the question is, if 90% of heart disease is preventable, why haven't we? Why do I still have a job? Why are my kids still going to have dinner tonight because I'm still employed? The truth is that we can, but many things really do have to happen, and it's really what all of our speakers have spoken about, and it's about knowledge. We have to understand the disease to defeat it. We have to understand the causes of what causes the disease to develop in the first place, and then it's about the SMART goals we talked about at the beginning. You got to set a goal. You got to make it measurable. It's got to be attainable. It can't be something completely unattainable. I am not running the Boston Marathon with Paul next week, but maybe a half marathon walk in the fall. So something I can actually attain. And we need to find the tools, and there are excellent resources that are community groups that were out there that help promote heart health in our region. And it's really about doing it together. And Dr. Lynn talked about the idea that one of the reasons that blue zones are so effective is that as communities, people keep each other healthy, that there is that interactions. And as we've become an urbanized environment, more and more we're becoming isolated. So it's really about bringing everybody back together. We're really in this together if we're going to prevent this disease and if I'm going to talk myself out of a job. So, the first step is to understand the disease. What is it? What is a heart attack? What is a stroke? We keep talking about it. What is it? And is there a difference between a heart attack and stroke? And sometimes a lot of confusion about some of this terminology. So a stroke is very, similar processes, but very distinctly different. So a stroke is a blocked blood vessel to the brain. Your brain is being damaged. A heart attack is a blocked blood vessel to the heart. So now the heart's not getting different organ, same process. The risk factor of what causes a stroke is very similar in many ways to what causes heart attacks. And it's really about this. It's about atherosclerosis. It's about developing plaque, narrowing up the arteries, whether it's narrowing the arteries that lead blood flow to the brain and cause strokes, or narrowing the arteries that lead blood flow to the heart that leads to heart attacks or angina. And it's really about the fatty deposits that we call plaque that builds up within the arteries, and the medical terminology being atherosclerosis. And it occurs in multiple areas. It occurs in our brain blood vessels leading to strokes, in heart blood vessels leading to heart attacks. It occurs in our legs leading to gangrene and claudication and peripheral arterial disease. And so the disease processes are very similar, and what we've talked about today to protect our heart protects our brain from strokes, protects our legs from peripheral vascular disease. So it's, the benefits from the interventions are system-wise, but the disease is also system-wide, and it's really about being very comprehensive about that. One of the myths is that heart attacks or plaque is an elderly disease. Actually, it turns out that plaque starts to form at a very young age, and there have been autopsy studies in young people suggesting that in our early ages we start to deposit fat into the arteries, and gradually over many, many years it starts to actually get to the point that it restricts blood flow. And I'm always amazed every time I'm attending in the coronary care unit, someone will ask me, well, why did I have my heart attack today, doc? How did this happen to me today? Well, it didn't happen to you today. The disease didn't happen the day that you saw me. It happened over the many, many years that the plaque was gradually building. Your heart continues to compensate until you get to a tipping point where it just can't anymore, and then you end up with damage to the heart, the brain, other organ systems. So it's really a continuum, and it's about trying to both certainly treat people once they've got advanced disease, but the goal is really about prevention. It's about trying to prevent this from happening or prevent it from progressing. And we can do that. We know that we need to understand the disease well, though. So strokes, again, similar to heart attacks, but now our brain. So you need to understand the symptoms. You need to seek out help if you have these types of symptoms. If you suddenly develop a severe headache, blurred vision, difficulty with speech, you start getting dizzy unexpectedly, you're getting numb or weak in an arm or leg, something very focal, something in one area, unexpected, going on for a brief period of time, you're not sure what it is, error on the side of safety, it potentially could be your brain giving you a warning that it's at risk of damaging. Heart attack, same plaque building up now inside our heart attack. So what are the symptoms that we need to watch for? We need to suddenly watch for chest pain. So we all know about the elephant sitting on our chest. It turns out that not everybody gets that elephant sitting on their chest. Some people just get arm pain, they get jaw pain, they get pain in their, in their face area. And my rule of thumb is if it's between your nose and your belly button, and it's achy, you're not sure what it is, it's your heart unless you're certain it's not. If you banged your arm on the walk into the wall and your arm's achy, well, sure, it's your arm from that. But, if you've got risk factors for heart disease, you've got symptoms that are unexplained, always make sure that that's looked into. Beyond pain, though, some people just get short of breath. They suddenly start feeling very short of breath, break out in a sweat, get severe nausea, really fatigued for no reason. You haven't really done anything, and you're feeling fine, and all of a sudden you're profoundly fatigued. You're feeling like you're going to faint. All potential warning signs that there's something going on with the heart. And if you're at risk, if you have risk factors, you want to make sure you seek that out. Delay can be deadly, and that's been one of the things that we keep pushing, is that we want people to seek out help earlier. It's one of the biggest reasons why heart attacks go from tiny heart attacks to massive heart attacks is that there's a delay in someone getting to the hospital. And just actually last weekend when I was on call, a young man who was in his mid-50s, waited almost 3 days before he came to the hospital, had a massive heart attack. Now, could we have prevented all of that? Hard to say, but certainly by the time he got there, so much damage had happened that we were much further along in the process. So do not wait for prolonged periods of time. Take action within a few minutes. If you've got angina, you've got chest pains, use your nitro. Any symptom that goes on beyond about 25 minutes to half hour, I always tell people, call 911, get there by ambulance. Do not drive yourself. Do not have your neighbor or your family member drive you. We don't want you having an accident en route and harming yourself and others on the road. We also don't want your family member driving you because they may get panicky and anxious and get delayed in traffic. The ambulance has those little worry things. They will get through that traffic even when the 401's backed up. So it's really about trying to get there early enough so that they can be treated effectively. And the same with the brain. If you're starting to develop symptoms suggestive of a stroke, we know that every 15-minute delay in arriving to the emergency department with a stroke results in 1 month of extra disability. You're hospitalized for an extra month. Every 15 minutes you're delayed getting to the hospital with a stroke. So really, we want people to present early. We want to find the process and treat it effectively. But the goal is obviously to prevent it in the first place. So, we've talked all morning about the idea of prevention. And, so many risk factors lead to heart disease. There are some that we cannot change. I can't affect the fact that I'm getting older and now I'm in the age group where men will develop heart disease into our late 40s and 50s, women into their 50s and early 60s. I can't affect the fact that I'm male. Male gender puts me at greater risk at a younger age group. Women catch up postmenopausally. Once they have their menopause, they catch up very quickly to men. But in the earlier years, women are somewhat protected. I cannot change my race. We know that certain racial groups are at greater risk. People of Aboriginal Canadians, Native Canadians are at the highest risk for heart disease because of high rates of diabetes and other risk factors. But South Asians, people of East Indian descent, much greater risk. So there's clustering. People of the French Canadian population, again, at a greater risk. The Portuguese population here in Cambridge actually has very high rates of heart disease, partly because of a lot of the Portuguese in our community come from the Azores Islands and the Azores, Santa Maria, and those islands, actually the founder effect, the people that started those islands had genes that carried those diseases. So as a result, there's great rates of heart disease. A large population from Newfoundland here in Cambridge, and again, a lot of the Newfoundlandese population actually comes from Bell Island. And the Bell Island population, again, was a founder effect, that the small cluster of families that founded the island carried the genes for heart disease. And as a result, there's very high rates of heart disease in the people that have moved here from there. So certainly that has a role. We know the family history has a role. Many of us have family members that have had heart disease, and we can't change our families, but potentially, actually, a lot of work now being done on gene therapy. Maybe there will come a point at which I can change the genes that I've inherited from my parents. Not yet, but certainly, those are things that we can't change. But there are so many things we can change, and this is really what this day is about, and what all of our speakers have talked about, is that there are so many things that we can do to prevent heart disease, so we shouldn't just attribute it. It runs in my family, I come from the East Indian population, I'm going to have a heart attack. I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that I am destined to that. I will do what I can, and certainly that's the goal of what we want people to do. So we know that 7 out of 10 Canadians will develop heart disease in their lifetime. That's what the statistics have shown over and over, both men and women. 12 million people around the world die each year from heart attacks, and 6 times as many women die of heart disease than of breast cancer. So it is a disease that affects both genders, and women catch up very quickly after menopause. All nationalities, all ethnic groups, both genders really need to work at that. Randy Posh, who many of you might know, was a strong health promoter. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years back, but he made the comment that we can't change the cards we're dealt, just how we play the hand that's dealt to us. And so, what do we do? How do we play that hand? How do we play the cards that are dealt to us? And it's really, again, about the things that people have talked about, the lifestyle interventions that do actually affect the risk of heart disease. And again, Paul mentioned that we need to do various steps. It's not one magical thing that prevents heart disease. It's really about doing a number of things. Partly, though, again, it's about knowledge. You need to know whether you're at risk. You need to know your numbers. So, do you know your total cholesterol? I always encourage our patients to write it down. They should ask their primary care providers, their specialists, what is their number? Ideally, we want to keep the total cholesterol below 4. HDL, or good cholesterol, the cholesterol that actually cleanses our arteries, we want that nice and high, ideally above 1.2 or higher. Below 1, it can actually increase the risk of plaque formation. How do we raise that? Things we've talked about. Exercise, quitting smoking, appropriate diet. So far, all of the medications that have been developed to raise good cholesterol have failed to show benefits. But when we raise good cholesterol through exercise, quitting smoking, and following an appropriate diet, it dramatically lowers risk. So it is about doing, again, lifestyle things that will help with that. LDL, the bad cholesterol, where do we want that? Know your number. We want the LDL below 2. Actually, the lower the better. There is no such thing as too low. And actually, a number of studies that we're involved in right now, we've taken people's cholesterols below 1 to points where you can't even measure it. It's so low. And the studies actually show that the lower you get, the lower the rate of heart disease, heart attacks, and strokes. And there is no bottom. So, if you manage to get your cholesterol incredibly low, we never back off on either medications or lifestyle interventions to allow the cholesterol to come back up. We don't want your cholesterol to come back up ever. The lower the better, but you certainly want to try to keep it under 2. That number may change. The guidelines may change around that soon. And, Dr. O and Dr. Lin mentioned the idea that we want to keep blood pressure well regulated. Again, know your number. Measure. I always encourage our patients to get blood pressure monitors at home. We try to get out cards for people so that they have home monitors at home. Check your blood pressure. It's your disease. Own it. Know the number. Ideally, try to keep your blood pressure below 120 on 80, but certainly we want it below 140/90, as Dr. O had mentioned. And again, sugar. We want to keep sugars well regulated, and it depends on your level of diabetes, what type of medications you're on, other disease states as to what the targets might be. But this slide you've seen before. This is what we need to change. We need to go at least from here back to here. Maybe not all the way back to hunter-gatherer, but we definitely want to try to maintain a healthy weight. You can wish for it. Each count as a separate wish. Each pound counts as a separate wish. So what is the impact of maintaining a healthy weight? All of the things that we've talked about. If we can regulate our weight, it helps all of the various things that lead to heart disease, and certainly also reduces the risk of type 2 diabetes. But sometimes people get really focused on, well, I weigh 200, I need to get down to 110. Again, remember the SMART goal. It's got to be attainable. Are you truly going to go from 250 down to 110 in the next 2 months? Not likely. It's also not healthy to lose such drastic amounts of weight, and actually makes a modest difference. So, Dr. O showed that steep curve of where do you get the benefits from exercise. If you go from completely sedentary, sitting around, to doing a little bit of walking, you get the biggest benefits. That's where the steep curve is. Same with weight, though. You get your biggest bang for your buck in the first 10% of your weight loss. Okay? You continue to have benefits the lower you go, but if you're at 220 and you lose 10% of that, and you're now down under 200, you're 195, you have made a major difference. Okay? That will make a major metabolic difference. The lower the better, but don't get frustrated by the fact that you didn't go from 280 down to 110 into the bikini, because that may not be an attainable goal. So, our dietitian had spoken to the idea that sometimes there is a point at which our body tells us, we're going to stay at this level. We all have metabolic states. It's really about trying to have a healthy approach to it and not making it arbitrary that everybody needs to fit into a specific look. And certainly, do not be a couch potato. Physical activity has been talked about over and over, and we've talked about all of these various things that lead to plaque formation or atherosclerosis, and certainly among them, the most effective or most important of those is physical inactivity. So how does inactivity, lack of physical activity, do it? What does it do? Well, it does it through all of the different risk factors. So lack of physical activity leads to dyslipidemia or higher cholesterol. It leads to higher blood pressure. It increases the risk of diabetes. It certainly makes us more obese. And all of those various risk factors leads to atherosclerosis or plaque formation. We also know that it feeds back on itself. So as we become heavier, we become often more sedentary. It's just harder to get around as we gain weight. And so as a result, it becomes a vicious cycle. And it is about trying to reverse that cycle. And again, every step counts. So it's not necessarily running the Boston Marathon tomorrow, but every step counts, every pound of weight loss counts. So let's have a moment of silence for all of those who are stuck in traffic on the 401 on their way to the gym to ride stationary bicycles. So, it is about not giving up the free exercise. You really, this is actually my wife, Michelle, and we're at an airport, and people are very healthy-looking young people that should really be able to take that stairwell are lining up, and I didn't have a wide enough lens that I could actually show you, but there was actually a lineup of people to take, it's probably a half a flight of stairs or maybe a full flight, but give me a break. These people, this guy looks like he's probably 18. He can't take a flight of stairs, but he will line up for 5 minutes to get onto an escalator. And that's kind of what we've created for ourselves as a society where we're just so dependent on technology, and we will pay money to go to a gym, but we won't take that flight of stairs. So this is an interesting statistic. 8 flights of stairs per day could reduce your mortality rate by 33%. So this was in a stairwell I saw in Vegas, actually. So it said this was at the top of 8 flights, and it said you're practically immortal now. And I was pretty pooped at the top of the 8 flights, but I wasn't immortal. But it certainly, again, speaks to the idea that you don't have to spend a fortune to really stay physically fit. Stairwells are free, and so are sidewalks. And it's about trying to get in activity where we can, and we've talked about the fact that we want people to try to get to about 30 to 45 minutes of activity most days of the week. Your heart rate, people always ask, what should I get to? Well, again, that will partly depend on what type of heart conditions you have, and it's been mentioned, if you do have heart disease, it may need to be structured, you may need to have some sort of assessment to determine that. But if you're healthy, in general, we want you to get to about between 50 to 85% of your age predicted, and these are the general rules. Do you have to do it all at once? Nope, you can break it up. You can break it up into quants of 2, 3, 15-minute, 10-minute cycles. If you can do it all at once, great. Whatever is going to fit into your lifestyle, it's really about trying to maintain those types of activities. And again, physical activity affects all of the various things that we've talked about. It's really amazing, though. Physical activity, even though it may not reverse heart disease, it actually can reverse the impacts of heart disease. It actually helps your heart grow new blood vessels. So this was a really interesting study now, many years old, showing that this is somebody who's got a blocked up artery, and this dark area is the parts of the heart that are not getting enough blood flow. Okay? We did nothing to this person. We didn't bypass them. We did nothing to them. They went through an exercise regimen, much like Dr. O has helped us create at the Cambridge Cardiac Rehab Program. And after a number of months, we went back and looked at the blood flow, and all of that area is now getting good blood flow. How did we do that? We didn't bypass him. How do we get rid of his blockage? We really didn't get rid of the blockage. What we did was we created a detour. So I talk about the 401 detouring around Toronto. Premier Wynne is still in Toronto. She will be the grief of my existence. But I can drive around her building. So similarly, the blockage may exist, but if through exercise we promote blood vessels to grow that can go around it, and in essence bypass yourself. You're creating a new 401 around your blockage, getting blood flow through that. And those collateral arteries, does it happen to everyone? Not necessarily, but it does happen in a significant number of people. And how do we do it? There is no medication. I can't give you a pill that will grow those blood vessels. Now we're looking at gene therapies for that. Far away, so far nothing has worked. Exercise. It's literally only exercise that's been shown to help mature. These blood vessels actually all exist. They're already there. Exercise helps your heart to make them bigger. How does it do it? Well, our bodies are designed to listen to its needs. So if your body does not tell you to do something, if an organ doesn't tell you to do something, you won't do it, right? So if our heart doesn't tell the blood vessels to start growing because it needs more blood flow, it won't grow. Exercise, again, promotes the heart. It tells the blood vessels to start growing. I need more blood flow. It starts to mature these blood vessels, and suddenly, in essence, you've bypassed yourself. So there is very powerful effects from that. And this is obviously a cartoon showing that this is a blocked up artery. This whole part of the heart is not getting blood flow. So that's why it's dark, black. It looks like it's in danger of dying because of this narrowed artery here. Through exercise, this artery is still narrowed, but all of these other blood vessels that were there before just start to plump up, become bigger, and start feeding the heart. So this area that was dying and dark is now bright red and is getting good blood flow. And that's really one of the powers of exercise. But, interesting, and talked about by Dr. Maheshwari, there is this idea now developing of sitting disease. We've sat for a long time listening. But sitting may actually overcome some of the benefits. So it's actually really important that we don't sit sedentary for prolonged periods of time. So this was an interesting study from England that suggested that those who sit for 8 hours a day have double the risk of heart disease compared to those who sit for less than 4 hours a day. And so sitting can actually overcome some of the benefits of exercise that you accumulate at other times. And there have actually been studies that suggest that even 7 hours of exercise a day can be overcome by sitting for prolonged. So you could exercise an hour every day, but if you sit for 8 hours sedentary, you lose some of those benefits. So the rule of thumb is about a half hour every hour. Try to get up, and you don't have to go jogging, but just walk around. Get out of the chair, don't stay sedentary, and a lot of jobs have now become sedentary. We're so computer-based that everybody's not their computer terminals, so it's really about getting up and just moving around a little bit, getting our metabolism started up again, and not remaining sedentary. We can't just read about exercise. We got to actually take the stairs and go get the books and start doing it, so it is about putting into practice what we talk about. And when I say to go for a walk, this really does not count as taking your child for a walk. I don't know what those machines are called, but that is not walking your your child. And we also don't want to wait too long before we start taking up exercise. We really want to implement this early. Certainly we know that there are other things, and stress has been talked about, and I can imagine this is not my kids, but if this happened to my TV in my house, I would be very stressed if this much paint was all over that flat screen TV. So stress is clearly a contributor to heart disease. We know that 20% of cardiac patients have depression, 15 to 20% suffer from anxiety, and 5% have other health conditions. And you know, there is this idea developing that mental health is heart health, that you know, the heart and brain talk in such intimate ways that you know, the brain has an impact on our cardiac function, and people after heart attacks, it's very common for people to develop anxiety disorders and panic attacks and depression. You know, this is nothing novel. This is not something that you're not a failure because you've developed anxiety or depression. You had a heart attack. You've got a heart condition. It is scary. It's going to make you feel a bit afraid and a bit anxious. That's where you need to seek out help for that. You need to make sure this is not something that you've done to yourself, and we know that managing stress is important. Unmanaged stress raises your blood pressure, causes chest pains, causes irregular heartbeats, and potentially increases heart disease progression. It also does all sorts of, you end up doing other bad things as a result of stress, and Dr. Lin talked about this. We often overeat in reaction to stress. We exercise less. We just become so tired because of stress and anxiety that we don't do as much. And some people turn to other habits like smoking or alcohol in response to stress. So those are all behavioral consequences from a mental health condition, and we need to get rid of the stigma of mental health. Mental health is a disease like any other disease state. I'm going to try to really wrap this up, but if you need help for mental health, make sure that you seek out the help, because there are ways to do this. And we've talked about sleep being important, but if you have a sleep disorder, again, seek out help for it, because sleep is actually very important for the health. Anger management, again, a mental health issue. We know that people who have poor anger control are at much greater risk for heart attacks and strokes. Again, speak to family members, speak to church members, seek out help when you need to, because those things can impact your cardiac health. But we know, again, physical activity promotes optimism, lessens anxiety and depression. This is actually a really interesting study that just got published earlier this year, showing that people who exercise can actually reverse the consequences of depression and panic attacks. And so again, incorporating that into your mental health is actually not a novel idea. So this is something that Plato, now 400 BC, 400 before Christ, made the comment that the greatest mistake that physicians make is that they attempt to cure the body without attempting to cure the mind. Yet the mind and body are one and should not be treated separately. So this is not a novel concept that mental health and heart health are interlinked. We've known about this for 3,000 years. We now need to get past the stigma of mental health disease, which often leads to other bad consequences like smoking, alcohol, all of which we need to try to moderate. And we'll skip past the ways to do it, but certainly there are good community resources that were out there, and we need to really seek it out, both for the effects of smoking, but also the effects of alcohol. People talk about the idea that maybe a little bit of alcohol is good for you. So far, I don't know if any cardiologist actually promotes people drinking alcohol. If you're drinking a drink, it's fine. If you're, as a male, maybe up to 2 drinks. Beyond the second drink, it has impacts. It raises your sugar, it raises your cholesterol, it often interacts with heart medications, so be cautious about that. And really sort of make sure that you're approaching it, and I won't get into the nutrition aspects of it that were covered so well, but one of the things that we're really focusing in on is the idea that added sugar, which are just so plentiful in all of the processed foods, we really want to try to limit that. And it's really about trying to both reduce the number of calories, but also the quality of the calories. And we know, again, Dr. Lin talked about the idea that eating slowly, enjoying your food so that you're not eating as much, because your brain will not recognize how much you've eaten if you just gulp it all down, taking your time. And portion control is very important. And again, I'll skip past for time, but we know that as plates have gotten bigger, we're eating more and more. So if we're gaining calories, so in this particular meal of spaghetti, they've gained 525 calories. How much do you have to exercise to do? How much, if you did cleaning around the house, how much would you have to do? About 2.5 hours of cleaning is 500 calories. So again, portion control is clearly very important. And again, we've talked about the role of plant proteins, but they actually do have very important benefits in terms of cholesterol. And nuts, again, now being promoted as potentially very important heart health sources of omega-3, may reduce blood pressure, helps to actually regulate blood sugar, and potentially studies suggest that it reduces cardiovascular risk by about 20%. Which nuts? The tree nuts are really the best. Walnuts, almonds, pine nuts, pistachios, those are the ones that have been shown to have the greatest benefits. So eating enough vegetables, fruits, nuts, incorporating them into our diet, avoiding the added sugars that come with processed foods, all of which we need to really incorporate. And we really don't need supplements. Canadian food is very rich in micronutrients. Outside of vitamin D that Dr. Lin talked about, because of our northern climate, we don't make enough of. Most other supplements in general people do not need. We really want people to get it from their foods rather than from supplements. And you can still be the salt of the earth on a low sodium diet. So it is about trying to recognize that we can stay fit and we can enjoy ourselves. Now, vaccinations we did not get into, but there was a controversy that often brews around vaccination, but studies have shown repeatedly that getting the flu shot reduces the risk of stroke and heart failure by 50% and reduces the risk of dying by almost 20%. Okay? So it has massive cardiovascular. Not only are you preventing that infection, but you're reducing the potential strain on your heart. And children who do not get vaccinated have 7 times the risk of stroke than those who do. So the science in vaccination is quite clear. And beyond that, we often turn again to our families to say that it runs in our genes. Well, this particular gentleman is reading about the fact that scientists have discovered the fat gene and attributes his obesity to the fat gene. Maybe part of that, but I'm sure about those half a dozen burgers are also a contributor to that. So can you do anything about your genes? Interesting, actually a lot of very interesting work being done. The Human Genome Project has identified 86 genes, so we've mapped out the human genome where all the different genes are in our bodies, and we've so far identified 86 genes that lead to heart disease. 46 of them you can turn off through a healthy lifestyle. You can turn off the gene. Okay? More than half the genes that you've inherited that might contribute to heart disease, you can turn off through an appropriate diet, exercise, cutting out smoking, all of the things that we've talked about. So while it may run in the family, we don't need to face the fate that previous generations have faced. And again, it is about making sure that as we change, as we grow, that we continue to evolve, but not necessarily in the most sedentary manner. And this is a slide that I've shown you guys before, but this is where that 90% rule comes from. This has been shown by Dr. Mukherjee now 12 years ago, but repeated in multiple studies, that if we do all the right things, diet, exercise, quitting smoking, in people that need medications, taking the appropriate medications, as much as 90% of the risk of heart attacks can be reduced. And that's really the goal. Is there a pill that allows you to smoke, eat fat, do no exercise, and live forever? Sorry, there isn't. And the McLipitor syndrome is something we need to avoid. So this is something we do see, is that people are put on cholesterol-lowering drugs, and then suddenly they think, you know what, I can do anything I want. I can go out to McDonald's every other day. And so, as Dr. O has mentioned, the effectiveness of pills are actually greatly enhanced when we implement them with appropriate diet and lifestyle. So people who walk their Lipitor will get much more benefits from the statin than those that walk it to the McDonald's. And so it is really about trying to do all of the right things. If you need medications, it's not a competition between medications and lifestyle. It's really the synergy. It's where the two come together that we get the greatest benefits. And this has actually been well shown. So this is something Dean Ornish showed. Dean Ornish is a cardiologist out in the West Coast, and he showed that people who follow an appropriate lifestyle intervention program, they can actually start to, again, reverse plaque and regrow blood vessel and regrow the collaterals that we talked about. So, very effective strategies that we can implement. And as has been mentioned, it's never too late. So if you've had a heart attack, you've had a cardiac event, it's not the end of the road. We can actually be much healthier and stronger after our heart events than before. And it is really about taking that personal ownership, and that's, again, where I keep coming back to, you got to own the disease. It's your heart health. You got to own it. You got to understand it. You got to make sure that you're implementing the strategies that you need to. As many of you know, we do this event. This is our 12th year doing it, and we do it in memory of my mother-in-law that we lost, Grandma Linda, 12 years ago to a heart attack, and she was a nurse in Toronto and died from heart disease and the ravages of diabetes, and it happened so rapidly and so quickly, and it was such a traumatic experience for me and my wife, and she is who we do this event in memory of, to really learn from her disease, and this is something that is a personal passion, particularly for my wife. So we're going to wrap up, and before we go to raffles, some acknowledgements. I need to thank a number of people that have really helped put this together. You had some excellent team of speakers, Dr. Anil Maheshwari, that led us off on the role of exercise and his humor and good spirits. Dr. Peter Lynn, this is his second year with us, and Peter is just such a phenomenal educator and just such a great sense of humor. Dr. Paul O, that just spoke before me and has been really a mentor for our cardiac rehab program and helped us to really stitch the system together. Christina, I think, did a fabulous job trying to really make the dietary aspects of this very practical. So a huge round of applause for our experts that spoke before us. I think many of you did avail yourselves of some of the personalized nursing assessments, and as I said, there were some questions that were sent forward that were just a little too personal for me to address in a public forum, but hopefully you've been able to seek out some of our excellent team of nurses, and I really cannot thank them enough for volunteering and spending their morning with us to really make it a personal experience. A huge round of applause for the nursing team that was with us this morning, please. Many of you were part of our Survivors, but this is our largest Survivors Walk, so I was so happy to see so many different people out there walking with us, and this is our team that led that walk. Antonio, who may or may not still be here, but came with his baby, brand new baby girl, such a cutie. So just a great team that helped us walk around and put to practice what we've talked about. Please. Now, I don't know if you guys did the stretch. I struggled with that dance that the ladies were putting on, and Nick was leading as well, but I'm just not coordinated enough. Brown man can't dance. So it's a great group of people that really led that. Again, a huge round of applause to the people that put that together. And to put an event together like this really requires a team of people. I'm just the front man to this. It's really a huge group of people that try to put the complexities of this together. Michelle, my wife, leads this team, but it's really a team effort of community leaders and other members from our community that help put it together. So many people volunteer to really help us all through this day, and again, they're giving up their morning and so many more hours to get this together. So again, huge round of applause. And our student volunteers, our young people that were out there really trying to guide people and get questions, and again, they, I think, do such a fabulous job, and it is really about trying to motivate our young people as well to be aware of the disease and to do their part to be part of it. This is obviously something that is expensive to put together. There's a lot of costs that go into something like this, and there are a number of sponsors that we need to acknowledge for their generosity and their commitment to trying to promote heart health education. So a big round of applause for our corporate sponsors and our community sponsors, many of whom had booths out there, and again, really helping us to try to get the message out. There's so many great resources in our community that are often underutilized, and we really need to seek them out and really seek out the knowledge that they can provide for us. To get the word out, the media sponsors that really help to try to get the information out about this day and help us promote heart health in the community. And and the door prizes that are coming up shortly, some great door prizes, we think, our local community vendors for their support to try to get this out. And the exhibitors, I think people seem to enjoy that, and hopefully you will have filled out your 10 questions correctly. The staff of the Cambridge Cardiac Care Centre, many of whom are here, really this is their passion to put together. I'm the front man for this. And most importantly, my wife, Michelle. This is really her labor of love, and this is something she has now been doing for 12 years. Michelle, please.